Hey guys, well, today I'm going to do a video that hopefully is going to start off a series I've been really wanting to restart doing again for the longest time. And basically my original channel, this is what I called, like, story time, or whatever, like a video series or whatever. Basically, you've probably seen videos like this, whether or not they're called the same thing, where basically, the person just sits down and kind of tells a story about stuff that's happened to them over the course of their life that probably otherwise wouldn't come up in the normal course of videos. This is one of those kind of stories for me. And basically, this story stars, if you will, me and a guy that I was once best friends with up until he was one of my best friends up until around 2007. So this story, this guy, his name is Sunil, the same person I have mentioned in passing in the past in a couple of videos. Like, the guy that I've said before, it's kind of how much MJ from Cold Eater's channel reminds me so much of. It's almost freaky. This is the guy that I've talked about that. He actually has appeared in one of my videos in the past, a very brief video, which I will link in the description if you want to see it. It's very short. It's like 17 seconds long. But me and this guy, though, yes, we were best friends up until like 2007. Which originally that actually was going to be the video I'm doing now, or I'm going to upload today. Where originally I was going to do a video kind of talking about how we met and ultimately what happened between us, and why me and this guy haven't spoken in almost 2 years. Yeah, so last time me and this guy have actually spoken to each other was like 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. But that's another, like I said, that's another story. But at this point though, at the point this story takes place though, he was still one of my best friends, and when this story takes place, I believe it was like 2005 or 2006, I believe. It was it was one of the 2 years. I can't remember specifically. I wanted to say 2006 though, but anyway, back in 2006, me and Sunil late one night we decided to go drive around our town, because one night, so about midnight or so, we decided to just go drive around for the sake of it. And so basically, that night at midnight, around midnight, I dropped by his house to go pick him up. And this is kind of important to the story, so let me tell you kind of where he lives at. Where the street he used to live on, he doesn't live there anymore. He lives in Texas now, but the street he used to live on, the main park in my town, the park that I go to sometimes, that you've seen in my videos. He at the time he lived literally like right down the street from this park, maybe about half a mile away. And so I picked him up, and that was the first thing we did. We drove through drove through this park, and basically after we drove around, and as we drove around the park, there was this we saw the usual sight that there are a few cars parked different places in the park, which is another story I'll get into at some point, which I'll share. Yeah, we saw the usual sights of like several cars parked around the park, and we drove around the curve at one point we saw this white car seen by some trees, and as we drove by, this car flashed its headlights at us, but we didn't really think anything about it, and we just kept on driving, and and basically, about 30 minutes later, we had finished driving through our town, and I was about to take him back to his house. I was about to drop him off back at his house, and we decided, well, let's drive through the park one more time. Okay, so that's what we did. We drove through the park one last time, and most of the cars from earlier had already left. However, this white car was still in the same spot as we passed it. And again, we didn't really pay much attention to it as we drove by it. So we drove by it, and we basically I drove back to his house, and I pulled into his driveway, and we kind of sat there for like a minute or two talking. As we talked, I happened to look over behind my shoulder to my left, and I said, I saw something unusual. And I looked over to Sunil. I looked over to Sunil and said, "Hey, isn't that white car we just saw at the park?" And Sunil looked over and said, "Yeah, I think so." And and this is the strange part, of the story. We sat there for like 5 minutes watching this white car, and the white car is parked maybe like 2 houses over, and the car, mind you, was parked like in the middle of the road. It was like the middle of the road where it was at. And we just sat there, like I said, we sat there for like 5 minutes watching it. And the car sat there the entire time. And it's like no one ever got in the car, no one ever got out of the car. It just sat there, whoever was in the car just sat there watching us. I was like, dude, what's it doing? And like, I remember I was like, I have no idea, or whatever. And so we just sat there for like a few minutes, and the white car just sat there in the middle of the road watching us for a few minutes. And eventually, I told Sunil, well, I'll wait till you get inside before I back out and leave. And he said, he was like, okay, well, I'll see you later, man. And I said, like, so, hey man, call me when this car leaves, okay? Okay, I will. Is what he said. And he basically got out and walked into his house, and I backed out, and basically I drove home, which from his house, I believe, it's about 3 miles from between our 2 houses. So I drove home, and I got home about 10 minutes later, and I pulled into my driveway, and just as I pulled in, my phone rang, and I answered it, with Sunil, and he said, "Hey man, that car just left." Yeah, so that car had actually sat there that long watching his house, and like it finally drove off, and I was like, so I told him, "Look, man, if I were you, I would be watching out and see if that car came back." He was like, "Yeah, I am." And so like we said goodbye to each other after we finished talking, and so I decided to go take a shower real quick before I went to bed and all that. Later on that night, and at this point it was like, I believe it was like 2 in the morning. I used to stay up pretty late. I really don't anymore, but at the time, it was when this next part of the story happened. It was like 2 in the morning, and I decided, well, I'll get on Facebook real quick. This was, of course, at the time when you pretty much had to be a college student to get on Facebook. It wasn't just like anybody and everybody could join. I happened to log on to Facebook, before I went to bed, and I saw I had a new message. I remember this was back at the time when they had that cool little, envelope graphic, but I read the message. It was from Sunil, and he told me that I think it had been written like he had sent it just like a few minutes before, maybe like an hour before, whatever. 30 minutes, I think. I don't know, whatever it was. I can't remember. This was like 7 years ago. He said in the message, Sunil said that he basically said that same white car had driven by his house like 2 more times, and so yeah, the same white car had actually driven by his house 2 more times, and I don't remember what I said to him at that point, but later on, I think like the next day, he told me how that car actually ultimately had driven by his house like 1 more time after that. And so this white car had driven by his house like 4 times over like those 2 hours or whatever. And and it's like, I don't know, the weirdest thing too is like he said like at one point there was like a police car behind it or whatever as they drove by. He said ultimately, Sunil said what he and his parents ultimately did was the last time the car drove by, they shined like a spotlight on it, and that was apparently, and that was like the last time the car drove by the house. And it's like I remember I asked Sunil a couple of times after that, like for the longest time after that, like had he ever seen the car again? And he actually said no, he never actually saw it again. So yeah, that is the story. That's pretty much the story about the night that this white car stalked us for some reason. It was probably one of the weirdest experiences we went through together. You know, it was so weird. But anyway, that is the story. So thanks for watching, and I guess I'll see you guys next time.